featuring the Alexandrian tradition, Gardnerian tradition, and other forms of British traditional witchcraft. So we discuss all matters witchcraft, all matters initiation, and all matters occult. And every week, starting in season 5, we have begun having a guest, which we didn't do for the previous 4 seasons. And we have a guest on, and they are ambush interviewer. So they will have a secret topic that we are unaware of, and that will be the discussion points of the show. So today our ambush interview is Angela DiFazio. Angela DiFazio is a witch and Alexandrian priestess from Salem, Massachusetts. She is also a famous psychic and medium that works at Omen in Salem, Massachusetts. So today is season 6, episode 7. So the magical number 7 has arrived. So these are my co-hosts, the Dame and the Duchess. Yes, I got to remember this, right? The Dame and the Duchess. Stop trying to make fetch happen. So this is Ellie and Levi. They are both high priesthood of the Alexandrian tradition. I'm sure they're all well known to you. I'm Brian Kane. So this is a call-in show. So after the guests' ambush interviews, they will join the panel, and you may call in at 309-GODDESS to ask any question you would like. It does not have to be on the subject matter of tonight's show. It can be about anything Alexandrian witchcraft or occult, and we will turn it into a discussion panel. So if you do not want to call in because you have a bit of a coward problem, then you can put it in the chat, which I don't see any chat. Is there something wrong there?
No, it'll pop up in a sec.
Okay, just making sure we're actually on air. So you can type the questions in the chat, and Levi will scroll through them and ask them on air live for you, and we will all answer your questions, including Angela. So before we start the ambush interview, we're going to have an occult news segment and an occult demonstration, and Levi's going to be doing the news this week, and Ellie's going to be doing the occult segment, so I will turn it over to Levi now.
Yes, so I have a couple of things.
Wait, one more thing, because we always forget to do this.
Oh, yes.
This is airing live on Facebook and YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook, please go to our YouTube channel at any time of your convenience, Hex Education, and find that and like and subscribe. It helps with our algorithms. Covendom's episodes are all archived on YouTube. So nowadays you have to select whether it's live. So some of our older shows weren't live, but they're all in there. They're all on that channel. And some of them are archived on Facebook, but people just don't tend to look for old videos on Facebook unless they really like your page, which does happen. So anyway, now to Levi for the news of the week.
Some news. So the first one that I wanted to talk about tonight that I think is really cool is, if you haven't seen, they are doing massive restoration work now at the Temple of Hecate in Lagina in Turkey. So this was a major site of Hecate's worship in the classical world. It is in modern-day Turkey, but it was a Hellenistic settlement at the time, Greek-speaking. Lagina was a place that had a very famous yearly festival for Hecate and had special pilgrimages people would make to her temple there. She was an incredibly important goddess in that region, and they are doing some extended excavation and restoration, actually, of her temple at Lagina. So keep an eye on that, and if you're visiting Turkey, it is, one of the most sacred sites to visit.
We have a single mosquito that is like eating me alive in here. I don't know why there's a mosquito in here, but there's a mosquito eating me alive. So if I fidget a lot, that is why.
Welcome to New Orleans.
I've never had it happen in here before, though. We've had tons of shows.
Brian's made of sugar.
I guess.
That's what Ellie says. My second thing is that today, September 15th, is the beginning of Hispanic Heritage Month. Hispanic Heritage Month is a month that spans halfway between 2 months. September 15th.
In Spanish.
Yep, it spans from September 15th to October 15th. It is, the reason for that is because there's a ton of Independence Days and holidays that fall within that 30-day period. But every year around Hispanic Heritage Month, I was an ESL teacher for many years. I really suggest you look at your local museums, local bookstores. You will find incredible things going on right now in terms of experiencing, different aspects of Hispanic culture, Latin American culture. So it's a really cool time if you're delving into any folk practices. Since this is a show about magic from those cultures, it's a great time to start looking for things in your local bookstore and museum. The third thing is, in religious news, the Pope is doing a tour right now and made some very popular comments recently about the American election, which has made the news and is talked about a lot. Ooh. And
is he pro-Trump?
No. Well, he made a statement basically that one of them they're both anti-life, one anti-immigrant, one anti-child, a reference to abortion, of course. But right when that news broke, we also are following the news of a massive scandal in the church in France. So take the man's advice with a grain of salt, in my opinion.
Are you saying he is pro-Trump?
No, he's not. He doesn't come out and say yes or no to either one. But he's been in the news a lot lately because he was in Singapore recently. He's doing a huge tour. Lots of conversations around the Catholic Church going on in the news right now. The other thing that I want to end on today, because I didn't have a ton of notes, so I wanted to use this time for something in particular. Publishing is weird in the pagan and witchcraft world, and what gains in popularity sometimes can happen because one particular book is republished or something gets a new retooling. And right now on Amazon, and this may have changed because I only checked this morning, the number one new release in the section just labeled paganism is a re-release of the book Pagan Imperialism by Julius Eola. And it currently has a very high star rating and a lot of comments defending the work. Because I think a lot of people are not as familiar with who he is, I wanted to use this as a public service announcement to let people know Julius Eola was a fascist. And I know that we use that term sometimes as like anybody I don't agree with. Julius Eola was an actual fascist. He didn't physically join the party, but he was a supporter of Mussolini. He wrote glowing recommendations for the Third Reich and Nazism. He actually was so far right that a lot of people in the fascist party of Italy were uncomfortable with how much of a right-winger he was. Eola is popular amongst a certain group of occultists that still believe that you can rescue his work from his political beliefs. You can't. Eola's works are nothing more than an apology for white supremacy and for imperialism. He actually argues in this book, Pagan Imperialism, that the strength and virtue of like Roman imperial politics should still guide pagan thinking as an answer against Christianity. It is a vile book.
Has anyone told him we don't have any armies?
Full of conjecture and conspiracy theories. And yes, he does write a lot about the occult, and he writes a lot about magical practice, and he is popular in certain subsects. But it was really shocking to me to see an Eola book as a re-release, as a bestseller, being defended by people online. Evola's pretty indefensible. And so I wanted to, like I said, use this time to give a slight warning to people. If you don't know who he is and you kind of get pulled into it without knowing, you should know that he was an incredibly negative
Did you enjoy
figure.
his book? Did you enjoy it?
No, Eola, no. Eola is a garbage.
I've never read it, to my knowledge.
Yeah, Eola is a garbage fascist. His ideas are not clever, they're not unique, they are just rehashes of the traditionalist school from people like René Guénon and others, but mixed with Italian fascism and Nazi paraphernalia. So,
Was he an anthropologist? I do have one, Julius Eola. I always said Eola. I don't know. Was he an anthropologist, basically?
I don't think he was trained in any way.
Yeah,
formally.
okay. All
Like
right.
the old...
How did he, I mean,
The
you know, his
hobby equivalent.
books in the 70s and 80s were like on the bookshelves
Yes, they were.
in the
They
occult
still are.
section. And they still are. I mean, I have at least one old paperback. I think it was on sex and women. But
Yeah, the Eros book.
what brought him to fame?
Probably-
Occult fascism.
Rare content at the time, maybe.
Occult fascism.
And he's only been dead like 10 years or something, right?
I'm not sure the year he died, actually, but no, I think it's been longer than that.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, Evola's been
I
dead.
think he died. He lived a long time, though.
But yeah, so just a heads up. So I'm going to pass it to Ellie now for our occult demonstration.
So do some research before you buy into an author, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting comment because somebody had said to me years back they didn't like the paintings of Picasso because he was an ass and he joined the Communist Party and he burnt his girlfriends with cigarettes. And I, at the time,
Maybe
said,
they liked it.
well, I said at the time,
Some people
I
have kinks.
I tend to separate the work of the person, the art, poetry, writing from the person so that I can evaluate clearly. But I always go back and look at the person. But I don't always decide. I mean, I love Picasso. I love Matisse. They were both really misogynistic men who treated women in difficult ways, but I still love their paintings. So
Yeah,
I
Evola's
struggle.
work is a defensive fascism.
Defensive. Okay.
I think
Yeah.
what Levi's saying is that it's promoting fascism.
Yeah.
Right. We don't.
It's not like he did this on the side, right? Like it's all about magic, but on the side.
I find it, even though I haven't read the book, I find the very idea of that to be sort of silly, though, because it's just not logistically even possible right now. There's not like a European pagan government or a European pagan movement with an army. I mean, Hitler was going for it, but
Eola also argued at one point in his life that the guards aren't real anyway. He just liked the idea of them because they were anti-Christian.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
September 15th is also the birthday of my father, Richard Earl Barnes, who has turned 93 today. And he's the same as he was when he was born.
May he live to be 120.
Oh, golly.
What's our demo today, Ellie?
Okay, this is exciting. I had to think about it because I like to do a hands-on practical workshop, so I have my little kit. I'm going to show today, this is my little bag of my own grown plants. I'm going to get them out and show you what they are. I'm going to show you how to make a dressing oil specifically under magical pretenses, a dressing oil for candles or mojo bags or whatever, your altar or your god statues. So this one is designed for glamour and attraction. Blessings to Michael Herkis, glamour and attraction, the glam witch. Okay. So what I have in here is a burdock root burr. If you guys don't know what burdock is, it's one of the most famous English love attractors, and it's because you can't get these dang burrs off your clothes or your skin. So if you want somebody to stick to you, you want to use burdock. Burdock leaves are in here.
If you want that kind of lover.
Right.
Clingy.
This is one of my angel trumpets. One of my daturas, not my angel trumpet, Datura inoxia, and these are for seduction and sometimes a little bit of fantasy confusion. I don't mind that with glamour and attraction. Roses, okay. My cinnamon tree leaf. My burdock leaves. My burdock root, and I picked this one because it looks like a raccoon prick. They're bent like that. They're a bone, and they come out and they're bent. But I thought this was good for sexuality. And burdock root traditionally is cut in little squares and threaded on a red thread. You wear it around your neck, and you're going to get laid in 6 days. And then lemongrass, which is Mercury and Sun, but it's kind of an accelerator with magic. So I use lemongrass in a lot of things. So to start with, I would get my... Ooh, I want to show y'all this tool. This is a tool from my mother that you kill yourself with. Okay, it's a herb chopper, but you roll back and forth on your block, and it's extremely sharp. You could kill somebody, cut their neck with this, and they'd be dead in 2 seconds.
I feel like I've seen one of those before.
Okay, so this is an amazing tool. It has a little wooden block that you set it in when you're not using it, but this is my best herb chopper. Not going to chop in front
Maybe
of you guys.
I saw it at your house. I don't know.
I like it.
Could have. Okay, here's my container. So to start with, I start with a larger container, and I light glass, and this has a rubber stopper, and you can really make a nice tight seal on it when you push the, click the thing. So what I would do is I'd get my glass jar, and I would chop up my herbs, but roughly, because I don't like to grind them into a powder. I want to chop them up so that their essential oils are coming out, but I can still see what they are.
Macerate them.
I use about 2, for this jar, and this would make many small jars of the elixir that you would use, the oil, the dressing oil that you would use. I put in about 2 tablespoons of witch hazel. You could also use Everclear liquor. I don't use straight alcohol. Witch hazel is a blend of water, alcohol, and extracts from the witch hazel plant. And so it's just, if you extract herbs through oil and alcohol, you're going to get every oil coming out of them, not just one group or the other. My oils are half organic castor oil. This is very thick. It's a carrier oil. It soaks into skin really well, so this would allow you to use this on your body if you want to. But castor oil is one of the best extracting oils there are. The next oil is fractionated coconut oil, and this is it's just a little bit less expensive. Fractionated means the scent has been removed. It's been atomically separated into oil and scent. And this is edible. I wouldn't necessarily eat spoons of it, but I use these about 50-50 with 2 tablespoons of witch hazel or Everclear. I chop up my herbs. I want to do glamour magic and anything I'm making for love spells, glamour spells, attraction spells on Fridays for Venus, but I would also look at where Venus is in the heavens, if it's occulted by another planet, if it's burning too close to the sun or too close to Saturn. I wouldn't pick that time period. If you knew your own chart, you would look at where Venus is in your natal chart and choose a better month to make your oil. But if you'd like to add in some astrology, I sure would do it on Friday evening, though. This is my cute little mortar and pestle, and I always want to use one. I just have to. Even if I'm not really grinding the herb, there's something about putting it in my little mortar and pestle that just really makes me happy after I've chopped it up, because I want to macerate it. I want to get those cells in the plant broken open so they can release their oils. Because
What else is she going to pull out of this bag?
I mean, it's very
right?
impressive.
Here's my cute little spoon that I got with something that I love.
Here's the
This is the
carburetor
fun
to
part.
nice
This
and
is the
heavy
fun
to
part.
grip
Bag.
one.
Then you want to use a dark amber or dark blue or dark green finishing bottle. So I would keep this in a dark spot for probably 3 or 4 months. I might give it a little shake every now and then. And so I put my herbs in. I've chopped and macerated my herbs. I'm going to put them in. They'll probably cover about a third of the bottom.
So you're putting the witch hazel and all the oils in this?
Yes, all together. And all
Like
the herbs.
one part?
Yep,
or-
yep. 2 tablespoons witch hazel, 1 part, equal parts of the 2 oils, and then all herbs. And just cover it up. Get it to the top. Seal it up. Give it a good shake. You could also hold it to your breast and kiss it and tell it you love it, and it's going to do a really good job for you because plants are real. Plants are people
They're
too.
real.
They're real.
Trees have brains.
And then after 2 or 3 months, and you feel that it's colored, it's going to start looking pink from the roses, and it's going to smell amazing. And then you can use a little funnel, which I didn't bring the funnel, and then hive it off into some small glass bottles with a good lid, dark. Still keep these in dark, cool places, and this would last you years. You can make them for money, you can make them for love, you can make them for healing, for protection, the basics, the classics. I do try to do this on the right day of the week and with intention. You can't, magic isn't just a bunch of parts. We use parts in folk magic because they were available to us, but they're not necessary. Just a lot of people like playing with the tidbits, So you'd fill it up, you'd put the lid on tight, keep it in a dry, cool place, label it so that later you're like, what the hell is this? Oh, and I open it and I'm like, oh God, that's a get rid of oil. Oh, too bad I got that up my nose. Put a label on it and then put it in your cabinet and know that if you need to dress a candle, I'm just going to see if there's anything else in here. It's really the wine bag. Somebody gave me this. It's a big wine bag, and hold on.
There's more.
Okay, no,
The bag.
this is the base of the knife.
The infinite. I like that herb knife.
No, this is one of the most, I don't know, my mom
Is
gave
it
me this. It
actually
says
created
Alaska.
for herbs, though? Because I feel like it's something else.
I'm pretty sure those
I think
are.
this is for-
I'm almost positive those are to cut up blubber. I've seen
Blubber?
them. Yes.
It's from Alaska.
Yeah, it's from. I've seen them in
okay.
TikToks.
Like sinew, maybe also.
yes, from hunting.
But it works really good for herbs.
It does. It's just got
Nice.
such a sharp blade. And then, of course, if you had some whale blubber, it's a fat. You could add that too. But I encourage people to go out into your garden and your yard and your neighborhood, read some plants, find some plants. Don't just order old dried plants online. And then get a cute little collection. These bottles of oils will last you years. You don't really need that much of things. And then enjoy making some anointing oils with plants. You could also put a stone in there, other products, eggshell, coffee grounds. There's a lot of recipes out there. Make 2 or 3 of them and then start using them in your magic and record your results. If you need to change your recipe, that is my demo today.
That sounds fun.
It's fun. It is fun. It's
I
good to
used
have
to
a craft
try
day.
make stuff with olive oil, but the olive oil goes rancid.
It goes
too
rancid.
quickly, yeah.
These do not. The fractionated coconut oil and the castor oil. Shoot, I found things that
Castor oils, be careful how much you ingest.
Yes.
Unless you're looking for that sort of thing.
poo-poo time. Poo-poo
Anyway,
time.
so the time has come for
Yes.
us to bring on Angela DiFazio for our ambush interview.
Hi, Angela.
Hi, Angela.
Blessed be,
Blessed
Angela.
be.
Hello, blessed be.
We're all so excited.
So what's
I'm
today's
so excited.
topic?
Thank you for having me on.
Of course. So, what's the topic? of
How's
our
everybody
interview?
doing?
I'm getting eaten alive by a mosquito. I think it's gotten full. I think it's gotten full now, and it's gone to take a nap or something.
It bit
but-
me once, but I hexed it. It's gone. now.
Beautiful.
And we all survived the hurricane. Thank you.
Yes.
It was
I'm
very-
glad everybody's safe and sound.
All indeed.
But we're not done with hurricane season. We got to keep watching the news. Okay. Done. Putting my stuff away. Thanks, Angela. We love you.
All right, Angela, what's the
so-
topic today?
The topic tonight, right? I had a really hard time because there's so much going on, and I know that the last few shows were very political. So I decided to bring it to be a little bit more personal
Okay.
and get to know the people of Covendom. I figure there's a lot of people who are coming to the show who are new, and they might not exactly know a lot about all of you or about witchcraft in general. So I figured I would ask you a few questions that might be a little personal.
So we'll call this getting to know you, I guess.
Getting to
know
know
you.
There you go.
Getting to know.
So my first question would be, what was your catalyst to being initiated? Because I know that for me, it took me a little while before I could find the right group to become initiated, which of course Brian is my high priest. So it took me a little while to actually get into a good space as well, because I used to think that initiation was a little like woo woo, and then I realized it's not at all, and how much I love it now is amazing. So I think I'm going to pose that question to Brian first.
Well, I think the story I often tell is the first book that educated me about modern witchcraft was Raymond Buckland's Complete Book of Witchcraft. And mind you, I was only 15 years old, so we have to put both of those things into context. But in that book, I was introduced. I'd already self-described as a witch at that time, but really I was just somebody who practiced spells. I made spells and had my own ideas about things. But it wasn't a religion in my mind yet. And so that introduced it to me as a religion through the belief in the goddess. So that was kind of the journey. And some of the next books that I read were all by the elders, because I had a used bookstore. And so a lot of the books I was purchasing were like the older books, and they all talked about initiation, and they all talked about working in a coven and it being a priesthood, right? So overall, I saw that when I saw the image of what the Alexandrians looked like, what the Gardnerians looked like, just the iconography and the feeling about it, I really wanted to be a part of that. And I didn't think it was going to be possible at that moment in time. I thought, these are people from a long ways away, from a long time ago. I'm not going to find anyone like that. But my first witchcraft initiation actually did take place in Washington, through a priestess of what we would now call traditional witchcraft, because it didn't really have a name. It wasn't a tradition, but they were following basically the information they had that was passed down or published in most cases. So it bit me on my, it's biting me everywhere. Like I'm feeling it here now, it's getting closer. So it's rising up. There must be, I think somebody put a swarm of mosquitoes in here before the show. So that was it. And so the moment I had an opportunity to go into initiation, I did. And, that would accumulate to me becoming Alexandrian in New Orleans years later. And that's why I like Maxine's phrase, the path of initiation, because I don't think once you go down, once the seed of it enters into your mind, it has begun. I love that story of I'll make it very quick because I could be long-winded. An Indian man tells a story of an initiate going to an enlightened master, and he packs his bags and he travels all the way there, and he asks the enlightened master, I've come for initiation. And the enlightened master says, you're coming for initiation again? Your initiation started when you packed your bag and started traveling towards me. Because I think once you set on that path in the inner planes, you're on that path, and that can take lifetimes if we ever fulfill it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I like to think that we're all on the path of initiation. It's not about a ritual. The ritual matters, but it's not just about a ritual. Hey, blessed be, that's my answer.
Thank you. Ellie?
Okay, I think I'm a little bit similar to Brian in that I was really interested in magic and the occult and witchcraft as a young person, and I was in Northwest Florida, so that was kind of a limited area for research and books, but they did have some things at the library, and a couple family members were interested in some unusual subjects, so I snuck and got their books and read them. I also read The Joy of Sex because I snuck that book too. But I couldn't find, I went to college, studied philosophy, worked in a Rosicrucian group for years at a distance, went to England a lot looking for better witchcraft. At the time I was more interested in, the Cochrane style traditional, what they call trad witchcraft. I don't really know how we're going to use those words today. It's different, and I found some great people, but they were in England and they weren't really responsive to me as a white American. And so I just didn't have any real forward motion with that. But it showed me some people in some places, like I worked at the Rollright Stones, I worked in Avebury with local people. And I thought, well, this is real, and there's some real stuff here, but I'm too far away. I can't really work with these people and participate in it. But it convinced me that religious witchcraft was real and that it was practiced, and it was done in covens or smaller groups. I won't say 13 people, but 3 to 5 people. That's what I saw. And then I just said, well, if I find something great, and I always thought if I could find Gardnerian or Alexandrian, that would be proper and real strong education and classic, for me, the original stuff, and that I was exposed to, that I had availability in my lifetime. And then I moved to New Orleans and got involved at working at Hex and met Brian and found out that he was doing real initiatory Alexandrian witchcraft. And I heard it from Levi and Carrie, and they said, Ellie, you should maybe look at this because, they're real people doing a lot of research. This is the real deal. And I said, I think I know it's the real deal. And then I was really well behaved, as much as I could be, so that they would take me seriously and initiate me. But I have the same attitude. I'll never go backwards. It is a path. It's a long process. We're on it probably since childhood, and I'm fully committed now for many lifetimes to come, and I'm going to keep my joy now is learning to teach and guide others, because I would really like to see the religion grow. Really, that's my answer. Blessed be.
Blessed be. Thank you, Levi.
I'm very much an odd duck with this question, because I don't have a long history about with what came to be called sort of like a Wiccan phase, right, or like a pagan phase. I actually made a video about this on my socials not long ago, that sometimes I can feel a bit like an alien in these circles and communities, because people have these long histories of exploring spiritualism or theosophy or Wicca or whatever, and then they come to initiation. But my religious history is much more Catholic, and by choice. My family was completely, utterly Protestant all the way back. And then I left that kind of angry, and so I came back. I don't think of my journey as a journey just to craft. For me, it was a journey back to belief. It was a journey back to theology. It was a journey back to philosophy, a journey back to all kinds of things. And there was this intense pressure that I felt, to be honest, for voices of women in religion. I was really, really tired of the hyper-masculine religious spaces I had been in. The Catholic Church is, the Virgin Mary is a very mute figure, to be honest. And, it was just such a male environment. And then likewise, oddly enough, the sort of atheistic, hardcore materialist, in the philosophical sense kind of crowd are all dudes too, largely. So I was just ridiculously annoyed at being surrounded by that. And I was reinvestigating some feminist theory and some female theologians that I, still to this day appreciate or whatever. And I was like, oh, it's a goddess. Like, that's what's calling me, this deep pull towards that image. And there's not a lot of options for that, honestly, in the Western world, at least, outside of craft. And I think that was a huge catalyst for me to seek initiation. It was also just, I think, this, I'll be a little blunter about it. One of the biggest reasons I got initiated is I basically sat down one day and was like, look, kiddo, you're just a religious weirdo. You're not going to get away from it. You're not going to be able to, you can't be a non-believer. It doesn't fit for you. You can't be a Catholic because they're awful. Like, you're being called by something. Quit fighting this and just go find it. Like, just go find it. Find it.
The Arbor Mist didn't stop you.
No, did not. But, like, just go find it. You know what I mean? And
that could have been your Wiccan phase.
Well, it was a one-time thing. But I legitimately, I just felt, I kind of sat down and was like, this is just what I'm supposed to be doing, and fighting it doesn't seem to bring me any relief or joy. And then initiation has led to, every major change in my life over the last 10 years. It's been kind of wild. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Blessed be.
Blessed be.
So my next question kind of ties in with Ellie's introduction with herbs and oils and things like that. What do you consider your area of expertise in the craft? And I will pose that question to Ellie first, please.
Wow, I love that. Well, since I'm a pretty much practicing herbalist today and do it professionally, just magically, herbally, not medically, that's become a skill that's pretty strong. But we don't use it in our work extensively. You know, we're not really folk magicians. We can incorporate some folk magic, but we're theurgists and ritualists. So I think probably some of the other things I bring to the table are philosophy and religious studies, so that I can have broad knowledge and compare and contrast and understand the ideas I'm presented and understand them more fully. I do ask a lot of questions. I probably oppositional some of the time, and countering, arguing, because I have that kind of mind that questions and wants more proof and wants to see the other side of the argument so I can understand it fully. You know, I don't want to be indoctrinated, and I don't want to just do what I'm told because I'm supposed to. I think that's the beauty and freedom in witchcraft, religious witchcraft, or it should be. And I like the freedom, and I like being able to think for myself and talk about that. Specialties other than that, I can't think of some. Can you, for me?
Divination.
Oh, yeah, psychic. Oh, I forgot all about that. Yeah, I'm a killer psychic. But I don't use that in our temple too much either. I really don't. I kind of leave that at the door.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Levi?
I think we all have to. I mean, I wouldn't say. I think I'm going to answer this question. I think what you mean is like specialties in magic, because like as a craft priest, I mean, I think we have to be, especially as coven leaders, because we're all coven leaders. Like you have to be a specialist in the liturgy. You have to be a specialist in the training, the culture. You know, it was a big thing. Brian like really. Put in me was this appreciation for the fact that there's a culture in your line. There's a culture in craft that you teach your students and carry on. So like I have to be an expert in all of those things because I teach people, right? I think in terms of magic, I'm pretty round in terms of like if my students have a particular interest, I can usually at least get them to really great sources. Like if one of my students wants to do ceremonial, I can give them introductions to ceremonial magic. If they want to do more theosophical kind of stuff, I have that as well. I've got a pretty good little library and stuff. So, but personally, like what forms of magic, I think in the larger magical conversation, I think I do bring a lot of passion. I don't know if I would say expertise, but I bring a lot of passion for like the philosophical and theological side of craft, stories of the gods, stories from the mystery cults, practices around like theurgy or religious magic are something that I'm really passionate about. The Greek magical papyri, which is not necessarily theurgic, but very God heavy in a lot of its incarnations. So definitely that is a huge thing. I did write a book on trad astrology, and actually we just did classes in my coven on astrological magic. So like I have a good grounding in that, in classical Western sort of European astrology, like the correspondences and how to cast horary charts and whatnot. I can do that pretty well, and that's something that I have a lot of love for. And that's what I would say.
Thank you. And you're right, magic, not craft.
Yeah.
Brian?
Concealment.
Invisibility.
A lot of things that one could say, I'm sure. I thought about saying wielding enormous amounts of power, because that would be fun. Levi's right. I mean, there's a skill set as a teacher that you are really responsible for exposing your students to multiple forms of magic, as well as the duties of priesthood, which I don't think are non-magical. I don't consider a ritual to be non-magical. That is a form of magic, a very important form of magic. The liturgy it's all magic. Everything we do is around magic, right? So there's not anything that we're doing in our work that's not non-magical, and everything has a purpose. But training all those aspects, you have to be really well-rounded. I do not believe as a teacher you can I don't think a good craft teacher can come forward and be like, here's my specialty, unless you're running a specialty coven, like a healing coven, in which case that group is completely formulated around healing. So of course that is going to be what it's centered on, but a training group for priesthood is going to be centered on being very well-rounded. Personally speaking, I'm going to say concealment, because I don't like to lay those cards on the table. And a lot of my students don't really know what I get up to because they don't know how to ask the right questions to, quote, interview with a vampire. Anyway, that's my answer. The recipe.
Wrong question.
Thank you.
I wish
Blessed
he'd
be.
answered that more fully because I am kind of curious. Sometimes I see the evidence of some working and I'm like, ooh, I go in psychically and I'm like, what was he doing in here? And he has it shielded so well. You know, it's hard to see around the corners of the shield, but he's got some stuff up his sleeve. There's no doubt about
Good
it.
Not
magic.
wearing any sleeves.
That's the first step, right? That's the first step
That-
of concealment.
that's
Don't even
the
wear any
trick.
sleeves.
I think that more witches need to learn to speak less. But that's not really good on a podcast.
No.
No,
Yeah, it's just
not
like
at
2
all.
hours of you going like, no, no.
In this particular case, I think I'm going to create a little mystery. Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Blessed be. Okay, next question. I guess it might be a personal opinion for you. What are the most common misconceptions regarding witchcraft? Brian.
I'd have to say the most common one to me is that witchcraft and magic are the same thing. You know, there obviously are other ones that we could pull out, like witches are devil worshippers, or witchcraft isn't real. Like, I think those are all misconceptions as well. But I think the biggest one that we're going to encounter as witches is that witchcraft and magic are the same thing. And I don't find that to be a living truth, or primarily not an historical truth. There are some elements to it, of course, because there's periods of history where folk magic was linked with witchcraft, generally in England. You know, which makes it sort of amount of sense because it was the magic of the witches. You know, the folk magic of England was the magic of the witches. It was because it's where witchcraft came from. So unless we're getting into ceremonial magic and things like that. So all magic comes from religion. There's no form of magic that doesn't evolve or exist from religious beliefs, you know. And, you know, granted, magic is one of the things that, the magic of the people, the folk magic, is one of the things that did survive from our pre-Christian ancestors. So there's a sort of a small nuance there, but I think primarily it comes from colonialism and Christianity promoting it as bad magic, black magic. You know, even when they stopped believing they were devil worshippers, they still attributed witchcraft to bad magic. So that's probably what I would think is my biggest, but there's so many. That's the big thing, is that there's actually so many misconceptions even within the magical community. So that's my answer.
Right.
I like that answer.
Thank you. Levi?
So, the largest misconceptions to me, largest misconceptions. Brian stole mine. I mean, obviously, I think the biggest misconception is that witchcraft does not have to be religious, right? Or not that it shouldn't be, or
it never was.
or never was.
Yeah.
I think that's my number one. My biggest one lately, though, biggest misconceptions about witchcraft is that it is a childish sort of phase that people go through because of the massive popularity on TikTok and other platforms of witchcraft as a sort of rebellious thing that you get into a little
Baby
bit.
witches putting on their makeup.
Yeah, it's like, getting over, and I think there's nothing wrong with using witchcraft. I have seen a lot of people use witchcraft to rebel against a really toxic upbringing, like in a very conservative Christian environment. I think that's horrible. And so I'm fine with that. Like, you do what you need to do to get over, like, what happened. I think that there's a lot of power there. But I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that it can't go deeper than that, right? That's where it stops. It stops at spell jars and being mad at your childhood pastor, and black craft clothing is what you wear now, and and that's sort of like what it is. So the misconception is that if you want something deeper, then you leave witchcraft and you go find the deep thing, whatever that is. For a lot of people, it's ceremonial magic, or it is a more initiatory African diasporic tradition, or it's asatru or heathenry, or but those are the real practices, and witchcraft is like that thing that got you in the door, right? I think that a lot of people are just unfortunately unaware that there's a lot more depth available to it. So I think that's my biggest misconception.
Are we having a technical difficulty?
Oh yes, I wanted to let people know, if we haven't answered a comment you've asked, we're fixing it right now. Restream's having an issue with Facebook. It's not.
I knew there was something going on.
Yeah, it's just Restream.
Yeah.
But she gave me a thing to fix it, so we're good.
Okay. So we're
So that's
fixing
what I'll
the
be doing.
comments. That's why we've got one comment. I knew something was up.
Yeah.
So Levi's fixing that, which should terrify all of us.
It looks like that panel, that purple panel, is laid on top of something behind it, right here. See that? Like you can see stuff behind it.
Yeah, it's good. That's the
Okay,
best.
okay,
It's
okay.
just a window.
I'm going to answer next, since I know it's my turn.
Yes,
since
please,
I'm the third
Ellie.
person. I think I'm going to kind of go along with Brian and Levi. My first thought about this was the mix-up with general American paganism or Reconstructionist paganism with witchcraft. You know, I could go back to my first answer, and the things I witnessed in the 80s, that's really when I saw publicly practiced pagan gatherings or witchcraft circles or public circles. Early 80s. I graduated high school in 82, so... And it wasn't for me. I was just like, oh, these are not my people. The general paganism. No, I'm not trying to diss it. I don't mean to say that, but it's it doesn't have anything to do with initiatory witchcraft. They're completely different modalities for me, and that most people lump us all together, witches and pagans and magicians. They're all the same goofy people. Yes, I kind of agree with Levi. Wicca, American Wicca, is a gateway drug. I'll probably actually agree with that. I think people that study American Wicca or eclectic Wicca.
I think it's a gateway drug to quitting.
Well, it's not. They're not probably not going to stay there. I guess that's my point.
No, I think it's already gone.
You're either going to leave it or you're going to go deeper because you realize this is not enough.
Witchcraft and paganism have started doing this again.
I think so too. But you know, for years I just didn't.
It's definitely changing.
I just had a hard time finding my people, and I didn't like the pagan movements. I just didn't care for the aesthetic and the people. I'm just going to be honest about it. They weren't my cup of tea. So this was all one big jumble when I first started to see it, and that's what made me seek out the English connection, because I was not interested in the American scene, and still for the most part not too interested in the American scene. There are some scholars and practitioners I admire tremendously and am devoted to their work, but they're kind of thin in the U.S. So the mix-up of paganism and witchcraft is probably one of my biggest misconceptions. Thank you. Blessed be.
Thank you.
Just seeing if the comment went through, and it didn't.
See, now they are.
Is art working? Now you know what it's like to text with Brian Kane. Is art working?
Now we'll see them here. It's all this different.
Oh, so it just won't show up.
Yeah, it's just a restream issue.
Right,
It's nobody's. Okay. It just happens sometimes.
All right. Is art working?
Sorry about that interruption, guys. Yeah, you can put comments in Facebook or YouTube. We will see them now. It was just a restream thing, which is part of our client.
It happens.
It happens. But sorry for that, Angela. What's your next question?
That's fine. Stuff happens, right? Do you consider any acts of magic to be taboo? I see a lot of people wanting people to do magic for them and things like that. So what would you consider to be taboo? Ellie.
Wow. I'm pretty liberal in this question. I'm going to tell people magically that it's a big circle. It's going to come back around. I don't want to just say karma. I don't think that's quite the right word in witchcraft, but the universe is one, and all energy is connected to all other energy. So whatever you put out, you're going to get back at some point. And I think harmful, baneful magic where you're trying to destroy, tear apart, break down others or circumstances is going to break you down to some extent. Whereas if you're doing loving, helpful, healing, supportive, building, magical work, it's going to help you be stronger and better. But I don't actually have a moral dictate about doing some black magic. Some people do it. I'm aware of it. I hardly ever have in my life. I've regretted it because it's been pretty ugly. But it's possible. It's necessary sometimes to save, kids and animals from a real predator, and there's a use for it. I'm just going to say it's pretty limited, and I don't think anything's really off limits, but people do a lot of silly magic without thinking about the consequences, and I wish they would think a little bit longer before they just pull out the old kill them with fire magic. Yeah, that's what I think.
I agree. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Brian.
Well, there's so many ways of verbalizing it. So I'd say let's think about magic as being a creative force or part of the creative force. So I think it is something that is wisely approached in an act of creation where most obstacles, most things that you need to deal with can be done in a way that is not overtly, intentionally destructive, right? So life takes care of itself. So this is not to mean that we don't bind or we don't curse. The difference is that our aim is not to be destructive. Our aim is to come up with a solution. It might be protection, it might be banishing, it might be a binding, but the aim is not inherently destructive. There are things that witches initiates are forbidden from doing, even so much so that you can be ousted from your coven. But you have to go extremely dark for that to occur, and it's really just not necessary. And we find it to be unnecessary, unwise, as Ellie was saying. So it's not so much that there's a list of. So I hesitate to say we can't do black magic, because we do some things that some people would classify as being black magic. And I don't want to say that we're doing the New Age thing, because first of all, there are times when we curse and bind, and we teach those things. But a curse can be as beautiful as may your Uber driver talk to you. You know, it's what we're not doing is death curses. We're not running around doing death curses. And if that's the kind of thing that comes out of you, you are a crappy person. You know, it probably won't work, you know, but it's working on you because you're creating it. Right. It's no different than people who want to force love. Like, I'm not saying we don't do love magic, but when someone tries to force love upon a person with magic, 9 times out of 10, they're forcing that onto themselves, you know, and they're just making themselves a gnarled creature. So, are there circumstances when it's okay to kill someone? I believe that there are, but I don't think that needs to be classified by magic. You know, like, it's okay to kill someone when it's okay to kill someone. Defending yourself because your life is at peril, not because you had an argument you lost. You know, but if someone's trying to kill you, or you're being impressed by someone who's trying to kill you, and you don't have, another recourse, it wouldn't be my first thing. My first answer wouldn't be kill them. My first answer would be get away from them, cut them out of your life, remove your life from the world. But there are circumstances when, we do have to kill, doing a spell to down a deer because you need the food. Yeah. There are circumstances. So we're not at all white lighters, but we do believe in personal responsibility, and we believe in being servants of life.
Yes.
And just it's very rare that you need to put things out into the world and the universe that are destructive. And so we do follow "and it harm none, do what ye will," which I know a lot of people find to be so difficult. But if you really know what that means, if you really can read, you understand we are doing our will. We're not white lighters, but our path is not a path of harm. That's not the path that we are on, nor would I want to be. And I think anyone that is a crappy person. Mm-hmm. So that's my answer.
Mm-hmm.
I love that answer. Thank you. Levi.
This is a very difficult question for me because, first of all, I will say flat out, there are forms of magic that are taboo in the craft. They are not things we do. And if an initiate did them in my coven, they would be censored for that.
Like killing people?
Or, just other things that are private that I wouldn't discuss publicly, but are forms of magic that are abhorrent to the ideology and practice of religious craft as it is understood by Alexandrians. Here's the big elephant in the room for me. I have very, I think, heretical beliefs about magic in the wider magical community.
Do you know you start every...
I know.
Every question is like, I'm very bizarre.
I'm very weird about this.
I'm very heretical.
I do not...
And you never are.
Well, I'll say this. I do not believe... I'm going to say something that really does, I think, separate me from a lot of magical practitioners. Let's use Ellie as an example just because she's sitting here. Let's say Ellie hates somebody and she wants to hurt them.
It's possible.
It's possible. And they live in California and Ellie lives here. I am not a person who believes that Ellie could put a collection of material objects together and say a string of phonemes over those objects and cause something bad to happen to that person. I do not believe in literal magic like that. I just don't. I don't think that it's doable. I don't think that's how the universe works. I think it's an impossible belief to hold in any sensible fashion with the advent of modern physics. I just do not think that's how the universe works. I think magic is always a transformative act that involves the will. We are an esoteric religion, not an exoteric religion, right? Exoteric religion is obsessed with this idea that there are forces in the universe that we're constantly sort of marketing with, and I don't believe that. Right? I'm a Neoplatonist. I'm heavily influenced by, Hermetic Kabbalah and and theosophy to some extent. Even though I'm not a huge Blavatsky fan, I have to admit her influence is there, whether I like it or not. And so I think the will is always involved, and the self is always involved. Transformation is always involved. So to me, the whole question of what's taboo is what is destructive to the self and the whole, right? And frankly, these people who think that you can engage in things that revolve around hate, malice, anger, retribution, cruelty, greed, constantly, and never, ever, ever have that affect you in any way negatively ever whatsoever, I think it's just a foolish worldview. I think it's the worldview of a fool. And if that's, what people need to feel powerful, then I think that's a sign of weakness. If it's what they need to feel intelligent, it's a sign of ignorance. If it's what they need to feel safe, it's a sign of cowardice. I think it's always... Or paranoia, exactly. And so I think any magic rooted in superstition and paranoia is something that is not going to lead to your transformation or growth as a human
I don't
being.
know. That mosquito went away after Ellie hexed it. It seems to be gone now. So I don't know how she hexed
Well,
it. But
it bit me too. That's when I got mad
I will
about
say,
it.
regardless of everything I just said, I'm not moralizing. I agree with
No,
Ellie
yeah.
entirely. I don't have any sort of moral Christian clutch my pearls moment about the hexing and whatnot. I don't care.
Cursing and hexing are not necessarily malefic.
Exactly, they're not always malefic.
It's just that
Sometimes
when
it's
we talk about it in social media, everyone's always talking about killing someone. Literally, that's what they're talking about: killing someone or making their life fall apart.
Yeah, and if that were true, half the world would be dead.
Yeah.
And we'd be it'd be nothing but dead people and billionaires. That's all the world would be full of if that's how magic worked.
Dead people and witches.
And billionaires, right? Just billionaire witches and a bunch of dead people. And so, I think that's where my mind goes. I don't really go into the whole taboo, don't touch kind of thing, except I will say one caveat. There are certain magical systems historically that I have not witnessed as particular areas of growth for students. I wouldn't ban them, but I might, the goetic magic and stuff like that, I might tell my students, this is not maybe the avenue.
I rail strongly against that personally.
It's I don't like it. I don't think it's a great avenue of magic. I don't see it bear a lot of fruit in people that I find.
It doesn't make any
good.
sense for a witch to want to do it.
You mean goetic magic, like conjuring a certain kind of
Parasitic
spirit
demons.
to use that
Specifically demons.
to
Christian
do your work? Okay.
Demons from Christian mythology.
They're
Yeah.
not even good demons. They're
Christian demons.
if you're going to summon a demon, at least pick an important one.
Well, why use a demon when you can use a god? I mean,
Exactly. Why use a demon when you can use a god? Or not use a god, but work with a god, yeah. But yeah, so that's my weird,
They're gods,
long-winded
not your
answer,
colleague.
Angela. I'm sorry.
No, that was great. That was
Levi
great
just
because I
tries
think it
to make
also.
people. Well, you're trying to make people think, and I do the same thing. In a different way, but getting people to think about the subject. It's very shocking to hear a witch say, "I don't believe in literal magic," and obviously he does cast spells.
Oh, frequently, all the time.
So
I did one last week.
It's trying to get you to think about magic in a higher way, which is kind of what I was saying too. It's we just don't. Our way of thinking isn't so base that
Right.
we would go to those forms of magic. We think about how we can transcend situations. When I was younger, sure, that's called playing and trying to figure out life. I did all kinds of weird little things, and some of them seemed to work. I probably could make the stock market crash if I put my mind to it. But I'm too noble.
No, you're very noble. I'll add something real quick, though, Angela. There's a huge trend. I've always said that I practice religious magic or theurgic magic because I'm an Alexandrian. That's what we do. We worship to raise the power, to quote Maxine. The power comes from the worship. However, I think there was a huge trend on TikTok that's very hotly debated right now to call magic spicy psychology. That's a phrase that you'll see everywhere. And then there was a huge backlash against that phrase by saying, oh, you're saying magic isn't real. And I never liked the phrase spicy psychology because I do think it denigrates magic. But I actually think I would be okay with a phrase that's been in my head lately, which is I think magic is sacramental psychology. Right? I think a holy,
This person's calling you
willful
out.
thing, right? I believe in magic, Wicked Witch. I just don't believe in literal thaumaturgy. There are lots of different definitions of magic, and the contemporary magic is a science definition.
He doesn't
Is-
believe superstition dictates the universe.
I don't believe Crowley decided what magic was in the 19th century, and we all have to follow suit, right? I don't think that I am beholden to Crowley's definition of magic, or Blavatsky's. But But I think that I am comfortable calling magic sacramental psychology. I'm not comfortable with the whole spicy thing because I think that, like I said, it denigrates it a little. But I think if your mind's not involved, it probably isn't going to work.
And you have to understand, and I understand everything that Levi is saying. I do not 100% agree with everything he's saying, but I'm okay with it. Does that make sense?
Like there's, I believe that.
There are parts of it I 100% agree with. There's parts of it I 100% agree with. However, I might beg to differ on being able to manipulate fate.
I think you can.
Yeah.
But I think your mind has to be involved.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think
you mean just
mechanistic
sticking
magic.
the apple on the coin
Correct.
isn't going to make something happen?
Correct.
Right.
Okay, we're on the same page.
Not just
yes.
the folk
Superstition,
action.
throwing the salt over your shoulder isn't going to really do anything on its own. Got it.
I still throw the salt over my
I
shoulder.
do too. I love tradition, guys. I love tradition.
I do too.
I'm from Appalachia. Do you know how many superstitions I have?
So we've clarified it.
Yeah.
now. Okay.
Sorry for that long-winded thing, Angela. What's your next question?
No, that's great. Thank you. So, being somebody who has lived in Salem and worked in Salem, we seem to get a lot of religious pushback. So I know a lot of people have a hard time responding to people who come at them with their religious beliefs against people who practice witchcraft. So my question would be, how would you respond to someone who comes towards you and attacks you for your beliefs with their beliefs? Brian.
They wouldn't dare.
You don't entertain this, really. Like, Brian would not entertain this.
It has not happened to me in a very, very long time, and it might be because I live in a bubble. Outside of the street preachers who are yelling at all of us.
It's funny to imagine that. In my head, I'm imagining it.
I probably wouldn't even entertain the conversation, but if forced to for some reason, I would eat them alive, because the reason why, it is Christians that do this. We're not having the Buddhists or, not yet. The Muslims aren't doing it yet. Could that happen? Yes, it could happen, but it's not happening yet because we don't live in places where they are dominant. But if we were in Afghanistan right now, it would be a problem. So some of the Abrahamic faiths, absolutely, all of the Abrahamic faiths would have some degree of an issue with it. I think we're safest with those people who practice Judaism, but there are certain communities where you would get rocks thrown at you, So it's coming from the fact that we believe in a goddess, and we believe that we have godlike powers from their perspective, right? So we're not completely relying on their God, and these are all religions that believe everyone should rely on their God. So it's coming from a place of insecurity. It's coming from the same place homophobia comes from, and I think that having a goddess is more terrifying to Christianity and its kin than worshiping the devil is at this stage in the game. I think it was way back when. I think they'd prefer it to be the devil. I think they'd prefer it to be the devil now because it fits into their narrative, whereas a goddess simply just shatters their entire world view. Like they can't even logistically wrap their heads around it. So, they'll just say it's the devil anyway, right?
Yep.
So I think it comes from that place. I don't think... I think most people who have to deal with it, when I last had to deal with it, it was because it was in family members, and some of those conversations didn't end well. So when I used to use the word Wicca instead of witch sometimes, it was to disguise it or soften the blow for those family members who, couldn't have handled the word witch right away. That's how most people I knew used it back then, was to sort of cushion the blow. Yeah. But then, I was a younger person. As I began to learn more and become stronger, the arguments didn't end well, and now I don't have to entertain them. So I say you don't have to have the conversation, unless you're in a court of law and being put on something to testify. You don't have to have a conversation with anyone. If they're there to learn from you and have discourse, fine. But if they're there just to force their thoughts on you about anything, you don't have the conversation. Just be like, no. I don't think witchcraft is designed for putting its ideas into everyone's head, and I don't think that it needs to receive them either. It's a weird answer, but that's mine.
Thank you. It's funny because you said you used the word Wicca to soften the blow when you were younger. I don't think I've ever used any other word except witch when I was talking to family or friends or anyone else. Even when I would be in the hospital and they'd be like, "Oh, what's your religion?" I'd write witchcraft and they'd be like, "You mean Wicca?" And I'm like, "No, witchcraft." And they just couldn't understand it. So I'm like, yeah, just put down paganism or Wicca, whatever works for
Floats
you
your
is
boat,
fine
yeah.
for me, you know? Yeah.
Oh, that's one of the
Levi.
reasons why I sort of rail against the word Wicca, and Levi's like trying to bring it up more and more. I'm gonna have a knife, and one of these days I'm just gonna shank him, right? And I'll make sure it's a prison knife too. It won't even be a proper one. Ellie, where's that thing?
I know, right? File of butter knife.
Because of I saw that happen, I'm not actually anti the word Wicca. I just don't think it needs to. There's no actual reason why a mispronounced modern word that was introduced to us as an older word for witch needs to be the word. You know, if people want to use it, fine. I don't say it that way outside of conversations like this because that's not how it's pronounced. It's pronounced witch anyway. So
Right.
we always preferred long before I was Alexandrian to use the word witch in my circles and the people that I worked with. We only used that word in its proper context or cushioning the blow. And, you know, here we go years later, you know, it's not really commonplace in Alexandrian witchcraft, except for Levi said, like, obviously if you get into Brazil or something like that, they'll say it a lot more.
Yeah, anywhere that doesn't speak English.
Because witchcraft doesn't translate for them.
Right.
It translates like wizard. It doesn't translate
Or
for
sorcerer.
them the way that
Yeah, it doesn't
Arming
translate.
sorcerer.
So that was a valid point when you made that.
Yeah. I will say, do you know how I
However,
use
they can learn to speak proper English and just say witchcraft.
the thing that wow.
If they got to copy the Book of Shadows in proper English, they can learn to say it.
I use the word Wicca in one.
It's like the Eleusinian Mysteries, except we don't have the murder part.
We don't have the murder part. I use the word Wicca in two ways. I know that's not the question, but I just want to say I only use it in two ways. One is I do sometimes when I'm talking to somebody at a work function or whatever, just go, "Oh, I'm a Wiccan." Because if I say witch, that's a different connotation to them. They think that it's a weird practice that I do with like black
But in
candles.
this arena, I don't think
No,
that's helpful.
here I would not call myself a Wiccan. I call myself a witch. But in places where it's the word Wiccan implies religion to people. So like that's why I will use it sometimes. The second way I use it, to be perfectly honest, is when an occultnik who's a snob.
An occultnik?
Yeah, an occultnik is like a snobbish, sort of grimoire collecting, ceremonial obsessed, holier than thou magician.
Never heard of this before.
An occultnik. When they're really getting on my nerves, even
Did you create
just to
this
shut
word?
it down? No, it's old. Just to shut it down, I will just go, "Oh, honey, I don't know. I'm a Wiccan." Like, you know, just because I can't stand that sort of like, you know, somebody mansplaining to me the entire history of Western occultism about books I've read 100 times. I'm just like, yeah, honey, I wouldn't know I'm a Wiccan. Because they just kind of react to it and leave me alone.
In a southern accent. You
Yeah,
gotta say,
exactly.
"Ooh,
Honey,
I'm a
I have no
Wiccan." I
idea
don't
I'm a
know.
Wiccan. But the real question of how to respond to Christians, I actually am quite a lover, or used to be when I was younger, of Christian theology. I am pretty well versed in it, and from various denominations. So one of my favorite things to do is determine what kind of Christian they are, and then start asking them really uncomfortable,
He just lets the devil
probing
take over his
questions
body.
of their beliefs. So if they're a Calvinist, I bring up all the verses that, you know, are used by Arminians to disprove Calvinists. If they're a Catholic, I bring up, you know, all of the things that have happened historically with the canonization.
Get 'em, Levi, get 'em.
And whatnot and all that. Not canonizations, excuse me, the ecclesial councils and all that. Anything I can do to just disarm them a little bit and realize that they're not playing with somebody who is ignorant of what they're talking of. So, yeah, one of my favorite
So
things
you have
is-
fun with it.
yeah, have a lot of fun. Have fun with it. Because humor
It
is
just
one-
never happens to me
Humor is
anymore.
such a great
it did when I
weapon.
was younger.
Humor is such a great weapon sometimes with people because it disarms them. Like, you know, yeah, take it. I just kind of throw it
I
back
don't
on.
know. I never encounter Christians who want to save me. Why do you think that is?
They've given up hope.
They're just like, no.
What about you, Ellie?
I've had a pretty good
She
run.
doesn't even know if Christians believe in Jesus.
Who are these Christians you speak of,
Do
Angela?
they all really believe in Jesus? Like, all of them believe that story.
Yes.
I've been pretty lucky too. I haven't been accosted very many times, probably never. One time was a family member, an uncle. I showed up to his property with a snake ring and a pentagram ring or something like that. And he said, well, I'm not having that witchcraft stuff on my property. I don't like those rings. I said, well, could I just take them off and put them on my purse? And he said, sure, that'd solve it. So I took those 2 rings off, put them in my purse, and stayed on his property. Don't need to talk about what happened later, but it didn't change anything. It was ridiculous. It was a ridiculous small token of what he thought wasn't, and he was not a church goer either. I never talked to him about religion, so I don't know why he was upset that day about those 2 rings. Maybe he had other crap going on, but I just passed it off as being polite and just moved through it really quickly because it was a family member and I didn't need a lot of discord there. And I'll say this over and over. I really moved to New Orleans 11 years ago for a lot of reasons, artistic ability or freedom and creative work. But to be myself without having the look at the grocery store or...
So she can get away with driving cocktails.
Right? I can drive and drink at the same time here.
No, you can't.
I know. You have a closed container, which is the paper on the end of the straw. Dang it. You got to leave
Paper
that
is
on
very
there.
important.
Right? I said to somebody recently, don't throw that paper out on the tip of that straw. You got to save it in case you get pulled over. That doesn't happen here either. But I left Northwest Florida. I left Northwest Florida because I thought it was becoming more and more conservative. There's a massive Christian university there. There are a lot of Christian schools that are coming there, have been there, and it's become a very strong Republican stronghold. And I'm sorry about it. I am a Floridian. I love the state. I think it's beautiful, but it was becoming too much not comfortable for me, not in the direction I wanted to go. Liberal and educated and traveling and curious about the world. It was becoming smaller and more critical of that kind of lifestyle.
Good it was not. Trump they had become.
Right. So I came here 11 years ago. I never will turn back. I probably will not go live in the South, Northwest Florida, or Alabama or Mississippi. Probably not Georgia, other than a larger city. Because I just don't want to deal with the people. And it's not really about Christianity and witchcraft. It's just the style of the people I don't really like. Y'all know I don't like people in the first place. So those small-minded, bitter, conservative, negative, approach people and complain to them about whatever, their religion, their clothes, their hair. I just don't dig it. So I tend to do what Levi does. I'm either going to say something intellectually confusing and throw them off, or I'm going to do what Brian does and just play blonde. Oh my God, I don't know what you're talking about. I never heard of that.
Is that what I do?
No, but you can avoid it. You can avoid it.
No, they just don't approach me.
Well, you're too tall. That's the problem.
There you go.
But one time
Asked and answered.
I was working somewhere in Northwest Florida. I don't want to just badmouth my cute little town and where I still own property, so I don't really want to badmouth it. But somebody came up to me and was talking about Christianity and Jesus, and I said, oh, I don't know who that is. And she just lost her cookie. She was like, you don't know who our Lord and Savior is? And I said, no, I don't think I've heard of it. Can you tell me more? And she said, he, meaning Jesus, he wrote the Bible.
Oh, my God.
And I said, in English? He wrote it in English? She goes, of course he did. He knows all languages. And that was just the one time that I thought, God, you're just a complete nut idiot. And then the husband came up, the one that had 6 wives, and said, darling, it's time to go. And I looked at him and I said, it sure is. And that was the last time, really. That was probably 25 years ago.
He wrote the
Jesus
Bible.
wrote the Bible.
In English, because he knows all languages.
He didn't. God bless.
I just was like, this poor woman. Oh, God, she had a
bunch
cotton
of
dress
people
on,
in
an
the service
apron.
of King James wrote the Bible in English.
Translated, yeah.
Well, some of it was rewritten.
So yeah, I'm glad that's over for me. I hope it doesn't come back to me. I don't want to be accosted by Christians. Thank you.
I don't think we have to worry about it
Okay,
here,
good.
really, honestly.
Good. Me too.
Thank you.
But isn't it strange that it's stronger in Salem? Maybe because New Orleans is known for being the diverse religious
It's stronger in
place.
Salem because Salem's known for witchcraft.
Right.
And
And-
so
and-
they come in
Right.
October, they don't know what's going on in New Orleans other than drinking and debauchery.
Mm-hmm.
And that they come here for that too when no one's looking.
Right.
So that's my thought process anyway.
They're probably more nervous about some of the other religions in New Orleans. We're the lighter one
Yeah.
in the common
Notice
parlance.
they don't protest the voodoo practitioners.
Damn straight, they shouldn't be either.
Yeah.
That's a real no-no.
What's your next question, Miss Angela?
No, but didn't they protest Hexfest one year?
Yes, but
Yeah.
they saw that as a witchcraft festival in the, they did it 2 years in a row, and it was the Catholics doing it, so it was nothing like,
They
Right.
prayed the rosary.
they were just
Nothing
sitting
like
there
Salem.
like, our mother holding up signs. You know, they did put flyers at the guests' hotel rooms, which freaked people out, but yeah, it was really tame compared to what we're used to.
I was there that year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next question would be, a lot of people talk about people having gifts, right? Like psychic is a gift or being a medium is a gift. And would you consider either of those being a gift or something that is learned?
Who do you want to ask?
Levi.
I think some people are naturally more
What
intuitive.
he's going to say is going to be very different than what anyone else would say.
No.
I know.
Theoretical.
He's the odd man
I already
out.
know that.
Bit strange.
I think some people are more naturally intuitive than others, absolutely. I mean, that's just a given. I think some people are absolutely more gifted at understanding human behavior, at spotting signs of it, at being able to read people intuitively in their body language, in their tone of voice, in their experience, in the way they carry themselves. I have just met people who I would be comfortable calling psychic because I think they're just preternaturally gifted at that.
Yeah.
And they're unbelievably good at it. I don't know if I would. I mean, I guess we could call that a gift. It depends on how you use it. I mean,
Could
for
be a
some people,
curse.
it could be a curse, right? Because they're constantly self-aware, which is a recipe for depression, by the way. It's like if you need a little bit of like not being aware of the world around you to function. Cognitive dissonance gets us through the day. So I think I don't know if I call it a gift, but I do think a lot of techniques of intuition can be learned. Like I think you can learn to be more intuitive. I think you can learn to be more tapped in to what's going on around you and to what people are saying and what you're picking up from people. So absolutely, I think that you can do that. I think it's both. I don't think it has to be a gift or a learned thing. I think some people are better at it by nature or rearing, and I think you can also, if you're bad at it, learn. I think you can grow your skills of intuition. You can be a more intuitive human being. Yeah. See, that's not super naysay. I'm usually a big naysayer, so like I was trying to be not so negative.
Okay, so how about mediumship? Because that's a totally different thing than being psychic. Levi.
Now there you go, Levi. You can just lay it on us now,
Damn
baby
it!
doll.
Oh, I was trying to be so nice.
Oh, you don't get to do that now, baby doll.
I don't believe anybody is born with the capacity to speak to the dead.
You don't?
No,
So you think that's something that they learn?
I don't think it's real.
Oh, but I'm a medium.
I'm a medium too, and I don't think it's real either.
But I'll
tell you why.
But I'm a medium
gonna
and I
get
talk
you
to dead
sad.
people all the time.
But it's not a line in the sand for me in the sense of like this is something I care about to defend. So like most
Yeah.
people in my life disagree with me on this. Most of my own covenanters disagree with me on this. Most of the elders disagree with me on this. It's just a weird thing. So I don't hold anybody to the fire over it. I'm not like James Randi, like, prove it or whatever. I don't care. Like, I do not think that it's kind to crap on people's religious beliefs. I have a lot of friends who had a deep relationship with spiritualism, who have a deep relationship
Didn't
with
you used to
ancestor.
go to
I did. I used to have a relationship to the spiritualist movement as well. But I don't have any judgment against it, is what I would say. Like, I don't look down on the spiritualist movement at all. Like, in any shape, form, or fashion. It's just not for me.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you. I also went to the spiritualist church for a long time, and studied there as well. So I have a relationship with them too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brian.
Well, I do think we have to go off of. Will you rephrase the question because we did the mediumship one too? So now that's what's stuck in my head.
Psychic gifts.
Well, I
and-
did
gifts,
ask
gifts.
in
Okay, yeah.
regards to both of them.
Yes, I just
So
need to repopulate
psychic-
gifts. So the original question is: are you born with natural gifts? Right?
Well, the original question was: would you consider being a psychic and or a medium a gift or something that can be learned?
I think it can be something that can be learned. So I do think that it's possible to learn it. I think it's possible to have a natural aptitude for things that go along with that skill set. I question whether that's reincarnation, at birth, environmental. I question the reason why. In my family, we are not people who like had careers as psychics or anything like that, or it was never like this identity thing. But my grandmother used to read cards, and interestingly, her two daughters both had like this weird relationship with being psychic, and then here now I am. But none of them were like proclaimed psychics, you know, and my grandmother didn't teach them how to do it. It was just, so I always wonder, is it just environmental because they were around it, and my grandmother obviously believed it, and quite frankly, we don't know if she got it from Sweden or San Francisco. Like, you know, so we have no idea. We just don't, that part of the history, we don't have it anymore. But I always think it's interesting that, yeah, it's sort of like that could be perceived as running in the family, but it also could be just environmental, you know. I remember looking in the mirror once and seeing weird lights, and my mom just saying, "Oh, that's just your aura," you know, and she doesn't even remember saying that. Like, I've had this conversation with her later. She said she didn't remember. Now, that being said, you know, we sort of parlayed into like what Levi's personal beliefs on it, which kind of had to with the question there. Mediumship, I believe that the dead can interact with the living. I don't know if it's talking to them like we talk, you know, because I haven't full on experienced that. I have heard voices, and my mother has heard voices, but I didn't hear that one. So my mother was in a place that I know was haunted, and would hear her name called, and other people who'd been there, other women that had, because it was always the women that he did this with. It was a dead veterinarian from like the 1900s, and it was still a veterinarian place. And so he died in the place, and he would call their names sometimes. Some of them had experienced this, and my mom actually ended up leaving the whole place. So the stories like that, I believe it's possible. I don't have an explanation as to why. Some people just think that's energy imprints. I've had experiences to where in mediumship that I've done, I've received images, I've received knowledge that came through psychic, you know, the same way I'm psychic, you know, and I was able to tell people things that they, you know, I had to rely on them that made sense to them, you know, because, you know, but I didn't have a spirit sitting on my shoulder or appear like Whoopi Goldberg. Some people might, I don't, you know.
You're in danger, girl.
Yes, and, you know, I don't know if I want that, but I've absolutely had spirits interact with me, but as energy, as their presence, and more of like a telepathic kind of a thing than like actually hearing words. But I'm skeptical on some things because I've never personally had the experience. So where I'd say my skepticism runs is that talking to the dead, or is it still being psychic with just a different topic, you know, kind of a thing. I don't know, you know. So I believe in spirits. I believe in mediumship. I'm just not sure if I know exactly how it works or if it always even works the same. Yeah.
I love that answer.
Yeah.
What about you, Ellie?
Thank you. Yeah, I love that answer. It's a good answer.
Well, I think,
Ellie.
yes, thank you. I love the topic. I've talked about it a lot in the last couple of years with all the psychics and mediums I know, because it's a fascinating subject, and I'm very love to hear what other people think about it. I do think humans are wired differently with different skills. Some are great mathematicians, some are great painters, musicians, psychics. I mean, that doesn't bother me that we're all born with some different set of abilities and affinities.
Like those children prodigies, Levi.
I know, right?
The ones that just automatically knew how to play the piano without any lesson.
Well, they learned it in a
This
past
topic
life.
has come up before.
Right, they learned it in a past life. But I do, but I also see from working with people and teaching people, they absolutely can learn to increase their abilities. I see a lot of difference in the child psychic. I'm sure, Angela, you were also a child psychic, where you're either shut down and blocked in your family or your social structure, and you have to dwarf it for sanity or safety. Those are the people that are probably the easiest to teach because it's in there, it's just been blocked, and then you're helping them uncover it again and use it constructively. And then you have people who I think are kind of like blocks of wood and who really, really love spiritual work, psychic work, and they desperately want to be better at it. You can be a not so great musician and get a good teacher and get your workbooks and practice every day and get damn better at it than the people that don't practice at all So I really think there's a lot of room for growth in all capacities with humans. If you put your mind to it, you get good training, you keep practicing. For me,
Ellie, are we humans?
who are you speaking about, yourself and Levi?
Me and you.
Oh my God, no, not all the way. So
Is Levi human?
I think he's maybe a little more human than we are, but he's got a touch of something else. So, but I never separated out because I didn't train for mediumship. I actually didn't train psychically at
It's
all.
the rabbi. It's
anywhere.
the ancient rabbi from the Temple of Solomon.
But I never separated mediumship out as something separate. I do mediumship every day. In
Ooh,
fact,
Levi was King Solomon.
first part of my day I was crying because I had to do such powerful and upsetting mediumship this morning. The staff, which never interrupt me, brought me tissues today and were worried about me. That's how upset I was by the work I had to do this morning. But I don't look at that separately than psychic work. The way I would probably describe it is it's all in the Akashic record. It's not convincing to me that if I can get accurate information about a deceased human to their querent, their family member or friend that's coming to the mediumship session, does that prove their soul is intact, unique, and still living as its last life incarnation? It doesn't prove that to me at all. It shows that all knowledge in the multiverse is there for eternity. That's what I really believe in Neoplatonism too. The one is internalized. Nothing is separated out.
Unusual, isn't it?
We're all together. So I can get good mediumship information. I'm not the best at it. I don't claim to be, and I really don't love doing seance work either. It just isn't very productive. I'm not the best at it, but I do good personal mediumship sessions with people because I'm a good psychic. And I can get to correct information. And then the fun thing is when someone asks me about a relative they don't know, like a great-great-grandparent or a mystery person in their ancestry report, I can dig around and find out information about somebody that my client doesn't know at all. And I said, you've got to write me or call me back and tell me if you find that this is correct. And I have repeatedly had people say, your stuff sounded kind of weird, and then we did a lot of digging, and it turns out you were kind of right. And I'm like, okay, it doesn't bother me to be wrong. I say that every day. I don't mind being wrong or not getting to the right spot for somebody. My goal is to help the client in whatever way I use my gifts to help them get where they need to be. I just believe in it. I think it's a great tool. But it's not an end-all to be-all, and I just don't think that the human, when we die, we stay in stasis in consciousness as the same personality we were in the last lifetime. And I just don't think we're really getting to the soul of the human. We're getting to the imprint of their last life.
Yeah, I think it's very funny because when you look at the ancient Egyptians in some of the more complex forms, they believe the soul sort of like divided into different
the Ka and the
things.
Ba, yeah.
Yes.
Which to me, in a different way, says we don't quite get it either because more than one thing happens and it doesn't make any sense. So therefore, we've got to create something that makes it make sense. You know, that's how I think of it. I just think of it as time is very us.
Yes. Time is us in a body.
And then, like I
right.
said, there's some people who believe those are just imprints of energy or something like that, and they're not actually sentient.
I think
I
we have
think there's
consciousness and we're sentient
I
after
think
we
that
die.
the things
but-
hanging out are different sometimes.
Yes.
I don't think it's always the same thing, but I think when you have like an actual haunting, which I do believe in, I don't know for a fact, but I do believe in it. It's usually beings that were dead for like 100 years or less. It's not usually like someone that died 1,000 years ago. So how long they stay that way, I don't know. Maybe Ghost was right. Maybe they gotta go to the light and they don't want to. They want to roam around New York and hang out.
And then you do pottery.
Try to smoke cigarettes.
And I think it's different. It's not all the
and do
same.
pottery with their ex-girlfriend.
It's not all the same. If
Or
I do
boyfriend,
mediumship
whatever.
for a Catholic or a Jewish person, or I don't think I've done mediumship for an Islamic faith person, but a lot of
probably
different,
because they don't do that.
right? They don't. But I do
Right.
readings. I do readings for Muslim women. I do, and I don't do mediumship. I don't think I have.
Well,
but
Muslims is Islamic. It's the same.
I know.
thing.
I just was using it like as the person.
Oh, I see.
A
whether or not it's
Muslim
about-
instead of a
everybody's
Islamic.
different.
They're probably
faith.
not supposed to do it. I don't know.
So, did you have another question, Angela?
I do, but if we have to take phone calls
No,
or
we've got time
anything-
for one more.
We've got time
question.
for one more. Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna get maybe a little more personal again. Uh, how frequently do you engage in learning more about your craft or more magically, like more magical systems or something, like for your own personal education, right? To put into like your educational magical toolbox. How often do you engage in like learning new things to help yourself along in your craft? And I think I'll ask Ellie that first.
Well, I'm a big reader. We all know that. I got a lot of books. Every day, all day long. It's my number one curiosity. And I do kind of clump it together with philosophy and religious studies. It's just the thing I was always drawn to. So every day, I'm doing specific Alexandrian work. Like right now, I'm reading Brian's second book. I just think it's important to do it.
It has 9 mistakes in it that have been fixed now.
Okay, I think his first book was really great.
They weren't like mistakes in this. They were just typos and errors.
Typos. I probably would not. I haven't run into one yet. But I'm just ordered a new book. I got it today. I was telling Levi it's a Schwaller, R.A. Schwaller de Lubic's book. He was an Egyptian scholar, and it's on number theory. It's a small paperback. I'm reading that right now. I'm usually reading 5 or 6 books at once, and I do a lot of cross-referencing and go from book to book to find out other perspectives on things. Psychic training, I think I'm looking at this stuff all the time, all through the week, in bits and pieces, maybe not as organized as a student, like sitting down at my desk for so many hours a week, but it's pretty constant, and I'm curious about it. It's my favorite subject. I want to do it all the time. Yeah.
Thank
That's my
you.
answer. Blessed be.
Blessed be. Brian?
When a thing stops growing, it dies. I love Doreen Valente expressed herself as a student of witchcraft, and I feel the same way. Now, what catalyst motivates that? I don't go around reading a lot of witchcraft books anymore. I do occasionally. I'll read more occult books if I'm reading anything now, or history books, unless I need to go revisit something. But once in a while, a good one will come out, and I'll be pleasantly surprised. But I think we all lived through those recycle periods where all of a sudden they were all the same thing, and then you get something like Ginsberg comes out or whatever, and it's just like, oh my goodness, wish I would have had this when I first started. Students will often, through their questions or through training them, cause me to explore subject matters, to sort of come up with my lesson plans, or to reinvent my lesson plans, or to bring depth to them in a way I hadn't before. And writing books caused me to do that, particularly the first one, when I went down the ISIS rabbit hole. I was like learning tons of stuff as I was writing the book. So yeah, it still happens. I still go down rabbit holes. Went through them this week. Different catalysts cause it to happen. But it's usually not from reading. I used to read witchcraft books. I was reading witchcraft books every week. And that doesn't really happen so much anymore.
Yeah.
Now it has to be a special book that draws my attention, or something I'm researching. But there's so many places to explore nowadays that can put you down rabbit holes. There are YouTube videos that actually have intelligent discourse, not like us, like real intelligent discourse, that will put you down rabbit holes to look into an occult matter there. So different catalysts, different inspirations, different motivations. Always trying to go back and dig into the classics, because they're a material you got to dig. Agrippa is something you have to dig in. You can't just breeze through it once and be like, oh, I read that once years ago, and because it's not as accessible as some of the information we put out now.
Yeah.
Blavatsky's works, who has those memorized? I'm not sure who wants to today, but it's a lot.
It's a lot. They're huge.
So it just depends on what I'm doing and what I'm thinking and what my goal is at the time. Right now I've been particularly sort of revisiting fairy folklore and stuff, but that's really sort of more for fun that I was sort of looking at that a bit. So anyway, blessed be. Plus, I'm going to put them in
I
Ellie's
love
garden.
that. I love
I've got a
that.
plan to
No.
like place as many fairy gentry folk.
They're
in
all
Ellie's
around. I'm
garden.
just saying that I have
So
a
this is a
separate
great place to live.
relationship with them. They're all over the place. They're all around me. I mean, I don't think they're not there. I see them all the time. I just
Isn't that the theme of the witches' ball too? Fairies.
Yeah.
Some spirit of the
The
Celtic
fairy
lands
realm?
or whatever, your fairy realms. I haven't decided what I'm going to be exactly. Some sort of druid fairy prince with no real descriptor. I think it'll look the same no matter what I call myself.
Fair.
There you go. Thank you, Levi.
I think I'm a big reader too. I just love reading, so I think that's how I engage. But I agree with Brian the most.
And he gives me a lot of the classical, like you just been reading one recently.
About Diana, yeah.
And you're supposed to send that to
I am
me, or
too.
I'll forget.
About the goddess Anna. I agree with Brian entirely. The biggest thing that will push me down a rabbit hole to revisit a certain type of magic, though, are my students. So, like, that's, like, always the thing. Conversations will come up and I'll be like, oh, I need to, like, craft something about this, or I need to revisit these books, or I need to revisit this particular style of ritual magic or whatever, because a student's interested in it. That's a big one for me. But I do find as I get older, I'm less interested in learning the mechanics of particular styles if I can't articulate the why behind them. Like, the older I get, the less I care about, like, ooh, I learned this new thing that if you take this particular tree bark and you spit on it on this day, and I'm like, I don't care. Like, you know, it's like, that's just, like, so boring to me. I need a why. I need a why behind, why are we doing this? Why is any of this important? And I realize that in the current ethos, that's not popular. It's much more popular to have a sort of chaos magic mindset of, like, it works because I think it works. I don't need to study it. I don't want to. I'm not interested in the philosophy behind it. I think that's stupid and Eurocentric and old school and Christian or whatever. And so if I don't have a good why, I struggle. But my students, more than anything, will push me to pick up new things, for sure.
Your students are your best teacher from
Always.
a certain perspective. Yeah.
Always, yeah.
Thank you. I agree. I think we should always be continuously learning, even as teachers or elders or whatever. Everybody can always learn from somebody, even if they're a novice.
And I pick up, sometimes you'll go back to something you thought you knew,
And
and you'll be like, oh, I was wrong about this. Like, I was
You've
like,
got to
Change your
revisit.
opinion.
you
Gotta
change your
revisit.
opinions, you
Yes.
revisit things, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, no.
Or you didn't understand it the first time you read
Yeah.
it. You thought you did. And then
When
you're
we
like,
talk
oh, wait a
about,
minute.
you know, it's a lot of people have done this, you know, what's the difference between, you know, beginner witchcraft and advanced witchcraft? Time.
25 years.
Time and like revisiting it
Yeah.
and realizing that basic thing isn't as basic as it once
Or that it's
seemed.
super layered, right?
Yes, that once you understand it, it's actually way more complicated than it originally seemed. So,
So if you have questions, you can call in 309-463-3377 or 309-GODDESS. The phone is working. I see it here. But I also see that we had a ton of questions that popped up in comments I'm going to go back to.
but before we get into that, we're going to bring Angela on to the
Yes.
panel now. So Angela will be discussing and asking questions with us. And if you'd like to call in, the number is 309-463-3377.
What are we aiming
That's
for?
309 Goddess. This is what I would sound like if I was a news broadcaster.
In hell?
Dark Shadows. Dark Shadows.
For
Twilight
who?
Zone.
Who are we broadcasting
I don't
for?
know. I wanted to try something different.
I'm Brian Kane, and this is the BBC in hell. So we did
Today
have
the temperature
we had
was 200.
247 degrees Fahrenheit. We did have two questions in the chat I thought would be very interesting, and we can open it up to the whole panel. Again, you know, Angela will be joining us. And the question was, what do you think of magic and animal sacrifice?
Let's let Angela go first.
That's a really great question because I almost asked that, and it was on my list, but it was on my back list, so I didn't really see it when I was asking all the other questions. Personally, for me, I understand that it was an old practice and people have done it, and I know that people still do it. I don't feel it's necessary, not in this day and age, to harm any animals for ritual sacrifices or for magic. And that's my answer.
What about you, Brian?
Well, I definitely don't believe witches engage in animal sacrifice. From the beginning of the witchcraft revival of the 1950s, it was made very, very crystal clear by Gardnerians, Alexandrians, Cochrane, all the people that were Sibyl League, all the people who were the original forebearers of this movement, that witches do not conduct animal sacrifices. It was extremely important because we were just trying to dispel the myths that we perform animal sacrifices, that we worship the devil, that we're going around putting curses on people. We were trying to educate people. No, we're actually a life-affirming religion with pre-Christian roots that believes in a goddess and, and all these other things. So, we're good. We're here to heal you. So it was a different, so it was very clear that's just not a part of the practice. And in the priesthood, in our training, it's very clear. We're aware of pagan history, but we're not pagans. I think we've said it several times on this show before, that the word pagan does not appear in our liturgy, nor is there anything in craft that tells us we should associate with any pre-Christian culture. Like, we're not trained that we should be Celtic, we're not trained that we should be Norse, we're not trained that we should be Egyptian, contrary to popular belief. We're not trained that we should be Greek or Roman. These are all pre-Christian cultures that believed in magic and absolutely influenced history, and many of them did conduct human or animal sacrifices. But witchcraft, it was never a thing. And when you look at the witch trials, that was really not an accusation that there was animal or human sacrifices most of the time. It was babies.
It was people. It was almost always people.
Babies.
Yeah.
So, we just killed people.
Or they would blight the animals, but not for the gods.
Yeah. So it's just not a part of the modern craft. So I think that comes from people getting mixed up that there are religions that do engage in animal sacrifice. Most of them, like if you're talking about like Haitian voodoo in Haiti, first of all, that's not witchcraft, that's Haitian voodoo. And they do it really communally. So it's not white people with their messy blood sacrifices trying to act cool and powerful. Or let me rephrase that. It's not Americans. It's not Americans doing this. So it's people from that culture who they kill their own food every day anyway. So when they need chicken, they have to go out and kill the chicken. So it being a part of their religious experience and 99% of the time they eat that, they share it with the community, and it's not a daily thing. It's not done for magic most of the time. So it's not a part of my belief system. I would only ever even consider killing an animal for agricultural reasons. If I was a farmer, I'm sure that my religion would play a role in the fact that I would respect the soul of the animal that I was butchering. Because I am a meat eater, so I'm not that's not coming from a moral place, but from a religious standpoint, it's just literally not a practice of ours. It doesn't exist, it never has. It's really historically not even there, because people want to tie in, what the Romans did with what we do. We're not those people in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. So we've got thousands of years of Christianity between us and them, and the Christians don't sacrifice animals, and either did most of our recent ancestors, unless you're from somewhere else. So no, witches do not conduct animal sacrifice in the name of witchcraft. Our gods do not demand sacrifice.
Ellie, would you add anything?
Yeah, no, I'm an animal lover. I would have a really hard time. I don't think I've even witnessed a animal sacrifice. I will say that it's happening a lot in the U.S., yes, people that live here. I'm aware of it, and I think it's common in certain practices, not witchcraft. And it's part of their culture, and I don't comment on it. I don't know about it. It's not my world, so I'm not going to make a judgment about that. But I love animals, and I feel they do have souls, and they've got little hearts, and they're emotional. And I'm a huge meat eater, too, and that's why I buy grass-fed, humanely raised, and spent so much of my earned income on better quality meat, because I care about the animal, and I want them to be treated properly. But life is life, and death is it's all one big cycle. We're all coming from one thing. We're all going to be living. We're all going to be dying. That's the truth. I hope it's civilized. I hope it's graceful, and I hope it's with love, both sides, love and death, conducted with love, and we're going to be better off. I think the person will feel better if they have love and life in their center for their work, their magic. And I just don't think I don't think the power, really you're asking about the power, that the suffering of the animal, the blood loss, the taking of the life, the point of that is to transmute that occurrence into the magical spell. Today, I know in New Orleans, practitioners use red palm oil. That's That's a perfectly good offering to the gods. We use food, flowers, wine as our offerings. We don't need to kill animals or bring blood to them. They've never asked me for animal sacrifices. My gods never have said, oh, I'm not going to be happy unless I get an animal
I don't know
sacrifice.
if I want to serve something that's like, I shall require the death of a chicken.
Right? I just, for magical purposes, I just don't think it's necessary. And maybe it's kind of becoming less common. I don't know, but I see it a lot. I mean, I hear about it a lot. I have a lot of clients that still truck with magical practitioners that do a wide variety of stuff.
I think I agree with what Brian said. It's very culturally linked, and I think that in a lot of places where animal sacrifice is part of the culture and where it's part of religious belief, it's a communal experience.
And they usually live agricultural lives.
It's a communal experience where the animals are honored, they are eaten. This was true also, I want to say, in classical Europe too. The parts of the animal that were not edible is what was burned for the gods.
Yeah.
And then the meat was kept and eaten and shared. I mean, this becomes an issue, the whole debate happens in the New Testament about whether or not Christians should eat meat that had been sacrificed to pagan gods. But I also want to say that in the West, this was a debate in the late stages of paganism while Christianity was growing. Like, for example, a video just dropped on a YouTube channel we watch sometimes, Religion for Breakfast, about vegetarianism and animal sacrifice in Neoplatonism. He just did a video on
I'll have to look that
the
up.
Pythagoreans, for example, and a lot of other mystery cults were vegetarians. It was actually very common for if you were initiated into the mysteries or you were participating in something that was a more magical kind of initiatory religion, you quit eating meat.
Right.
And not only that, you also quit doing animal sacrifice.
We can't see the phone. Is that
you'll see it's 0 right now. It'll go to 1.
Oh, I see. Right.
Yeah. So, Porphyry actually wrote an entire treatise you can still read, which is what this video on Let's Talk Religion is based on, that argues against animal sacrifice. And this was a pagan. He was a pagan. He was a student of Plotinus, and he was against animal sacrifice. And then his student, Iamblichus, was very pro-animal sacrifice. And so you have a debate even in the pagan world.
Some people like barbecues. Some
it's like, so it was a debate even back then. So I think, but no, Alexandrian witchcraft and Gardnerian witchcraft do not practice animal sacrifice.
No. In fact, I wouldn't initiate someone who practiced it in any way, shape, or form. I wouldn't work with somebody who practiced it in any way, shape, or form.
It's a different energy field. I wouldn't cope with it very well either.
So we had another question I saw earlier that I wanted to ask, and we could start with Angela again for this one. What do you think of people who practice magic or practice witchcraft but are atheists?
What is this noise that I keep hearing?
She just moved her phone.
Oh, is it just okay?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So what was the question?
So what do you think of someone who practices magic or witchcraft but is an atheist?
Let Angela go first again.
Oh. Well, magic, I think, is different than witchcraft because there are certain things like, I think even Levi, you were talking about like doing spells and things like that. I think that's a separate situation because you can believe in manipulating energy and not have to believe in a god or a goddess or any, deity at all. But I think when it comes to witchcraft itself, you have to have a god and a goddess. That's the whole point of the craft, right? So I don't think being an atheist is possible. Really, personally, for me, I would say if you can't believe in a god and a goddess, then how can you be an atheist? You know what I mean? If you're practicing witchcraft, you have to have that belief that there is a deity that you're calling on, that you're using or asking to help you with your practice. That you're asking them to come to you, right? So how can you be an atheist and practice witchcraft? Magic, I think, is a whole separate thing. I think you can practice magic by working in a kitchen and stirring your sauce one way or the other way. You can practice magic by using herbs.
You can't eat everyone's red sauce.
No, you can't. Some people don't make the red sauce. These are truths.
Yeah, but I don't think you can be an atheist and practice witchcraft because you have to believe in a god and a goddess.
What about you, Brian?
So we do these little, I think it was at a soiree, it might have been at something else, but we were doing a Q&A, and I had a person in the audience stand up, and I'd been discussing witchcraft as a religious religion. And she said, well, I don't believe that witchcraft is a religion. She said, I don't have a religion. She goes, but I am a witch. And, you know, da-da-da-da-da. Oh, thanks for sharing. Nice, but we do believe that. So we'll just leave that there. Can I ask you another question? Sure, she said. I say. And she says, well, my spells don't work. How do I get my spells to work? And I said, oh, maybe you need God. You know, I agree with Angela's entire narrative. I don't think magic itself requires religion, though I would say that in reality, all magic comes from religion. Like, I can't think of an example of an atheistic culture in the past. Like, we don't have any archaeological evidence of... Did we lose Angela? Oh, no, she's there. Archaeological evidence of a tribe or a people that didn't believe in anything. That just doesn't exist. So it's sort of a universal human shared experience that there's some sort of higher power or powers. And, I mean, that's interesting all on its own, I would say. So I don't think that... I think if you're an atheist, I think... You know, your magic might be able to work on accident, because I suppose one could worship power. You know, like if one is actually worshiping energy, even though there's not a dogma around it, suppose you could be tapping into God in some way. But I hesitate to believe that magic can work without a higher power. I don't think it's inherently possible, but I do agree with Angela that these are two different conversations. Witchcraft, it's a religion or a religious practice, does not ever exist without that. That's a very modern, very, very modern concept, I'd say within the last 10 years, really, that I've started encountering it. And it's from people who really aren't involved in anything. They just, you know, it's like the TikTok videos, really. Yeah.
What about you, Ellie? Would you add anything to that?
I don't know. I remember watching the chaos magic movement come into play, come into life, and I guess that was the 90s, early 90s, that I became aware of it. Maybe it was going on earlier. That was kind of atheistic and still magical, but they still created a narrative, whether it was Star Wars or comic books. They still had characters in their frame of reference. I don't think they were just... you know, moving, well, I mean, they could have moved balls of energy around, and I guess you could say that would be magic without religion. I think I really can't answer that on a show like this. It's a huge topic, and it really requires discussing the nature of reality, like total reality, and I think that's out of the scope of this show. But I like being religious and magic at the same time. Yeah, it's better. It works better for me.
I really like that answer because it's a huge question, because it's like, the word atheist also means something different. Crowley wrote in one of his journals, when he was running that group in, was it Italy, when he owned the house?
Yeah.
When people wanted to join, you had to...
Sicily.
He would ask a question and say, you had to say a couple of phrases to be admitted, and one of them was, I'm an atheist, right? But this is also a man who believed that, that the God spoke to him in Egypt. So it's like atheist for him in that moment meant anti-Christian, right?
Right.
So the word atheist has morphed, over time. At one point, Christians were called atheists. The Romans, it was very common for Roman and Greek writers to call Christians atheists because they didn't believe in the gods, right? They only believed in one God that was a foreign god, so they're atheists. And then the word also kind of just meant anti-Christian or anti-clerical at one point.
But I presume this person means.
Exactly. And the reason why I would not think that I would be comfortable with a student flat out saying, well, I'm an atheist, is because what that word means now is a commitment to a sort of materialist worldview, right? It doesn't inherently mean that as a word, but that is what it has come to mean, right? Like, there is no magic, there are no gods, there is no, there's nothing, right? So now, is that changing? Yes, I do think there's a large group of people who now are engaging in magical practices who don't want anything to do with gods, but they also aren't strict materialists.
Right.
So we're seeing a change. But I was somebody who was very, very theistic, and then I rebelled against that by really diving into atheistic philosophy for a long time, both continental and Anglophone. So the whole Nietzsche kind of atheist, and then the whole Bertrand Russell kind of atheism. And I have just come to be a person who does not find a lot for me in that world. So it's just not for me. atheist philosophy does not inspire me.
It's boring. There's not much to
It's
talk
so
about.
boring. It's just so boring. And
With the definition we go by now, being in a religion and being an atheist doesn't make any sense. So I think most of the people who are saying that about witchcraft are not people who are really talking about what we're talking about anyway. They're talking about spellcasting, right? Magic. So I just always have to remind people that magic comes from religion. It didn't come from an atheistic culture, So, and I don't know if I really believe there are really such things as atheists. I think there's a spectrum of belief.
And there are religions that are definitely atheistic, like the Jains and Theravada Buddhists and whatever. But
I don't know if I really would classify
I wouldn't
them.
classify them as either, because it has this Western ring
It's on a
to
spectrum,
it.
Levi. Nowadays, everything's on a spectrum.
It has this Western ring to it that I don't think is accurate. I think to call Buddhism atheistic is not accurate.
No.
I think it doesn't, yes, it doesn't believe in the same God as it's complicated and beyond the scope of the show, but it's complicated, yeah.
All right, I think we have time for one more question.
Yes, let me go through and find a recent one. Or if you all have one, feel free to ask too while I scroll.
Somebody said, I was assuming it was in reference to the sacrifice, that our ancestors were farmers, get over it. Your ancestors might have been farmers. Mine had people to do that for them. But beyond that, yes, but not all farmers were witches. And they're not the same thing. Going to the grocery store and buying a chicken is not the same thing as performing a ritual. Going to the yard and killing your chicken and
just
cleaning
killing
it
an animal is not a ritual.
It's not the same thing as ritual.
No, animal sacrifice was a complicated part of the ancient world.
Yeah.
It was not simple. And it wasn't, and they ate them.
Most European cultures were not super obsessed with it anyway. Some were, like the Druids maybe, but
And the Greeks and the Romans were.
well, not as obsessed with it.
Yeah, I
as,
was gonna say Greeks.
yeah, but I mean,
for sure.
The
A lot of
the
goats'
Greeks and the
throats got
Romans did have movements that were not that into it, and human sacrifices really. I mean, animal sacrifice happened everywhere, even in Egypt, But it was just not, when we hear stories of what they say about the Druids or what they say about the Aztecs. I think when you talk about animal sacrifice, people get really crazy about it. The Romans and the Greeks did it at certain temples and at certain times of the year. And it was also something they were going to eat, as Levi was saying, And my positive example of that would be modern Haitian voodoo in Haiti. It doesn't always translate to this country because I've known people in this country who don't, because they tend to be part of every ATR they can get their hands on anyway. So they're just killing things in a closet. But the reality of it over there, they are doing that anyway, and it's like their version in a way of saying Thanksgiving prayer over the food. It's a holy
And it's very communal.
offering. It's very communal, and they mostly always eat it. So I don't find anything wrong with that. It has nothing to do with witchcraft, like it or not. So
Right.
So we have a good question to end on, since Angela is our guest. Shelby asked, what were some resources or recommendations you would give for somebody who wants to get more interested in or better at spiritualism?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, for spiritualism, I would say go to a spiritualist church. That's the only way you can really get the experience.
Right.
They do services many times a week. Sometimes they do them every night. Sometimes they do them 3 times a week. They have classes. They have all kinds of events and things where you can go and experience what they do, how they do it, learn how they do it. But I did a lot of the classes while I was there. I did a lot of events when I was there. I attended the services every week. So I would say if you want to learn more about spiritualism, either the Spiritualist Church or Lilydale, because Lilydale is a huge spiritualist community. So I would say if you're very interested in it, that's what I would do. I would go to the churches.
Is that where you
There's a
met,
spiritualist. Yeah, there's a
Lilydale?
spiritualist church in Swampscott, and there's a spiritualist church in Salem, and one in Quincy, and I think there's another one around here, but I can't remember where it is. But yeah, that's where I went. I went to the one in Swampscott, the majority of the time. I did go to the Salem one, but a lot of times their services were at night. So it was easier for me to go during the day, and I used to go on Sundays. So yeah, they did it on Sunday. But classes and stuff were nights, probably like Thursdays, I think it was. But I loved it. I really did. I enjoyed it very much. So that would be my recommendation.
Is the philosophy of the spiritualist church, I understood that mediums usually run the service of the church service, and that the theory is that by talking to the dead, we are confirming that there's life after death. There's a lot of spiritual and religious meaning to our lives. We're valuable. It doesn't end when our body dies, and that's the fellowship and the community and the source of hope and faith is brought forth by the idea that humans don't really perish. Is that a way to describe it or not?
That's the perfect way to describe it.
Okay.
That's exactly how they describe it in their pamphlets, and when you have to take the class to learn about it before you can actually become a spiritualist, you have to take a class for it and kind of pass the class.
Right.
But it is about the continuation of life after death and through evidential information.
Right.
So when you're practicing mediumship and you're talking to someone whose person has passed, you're giving them actual evidence of the person that they can take, but you're not asking them questions except for, does this resonate? I don't want you to feed the medium, is what we used to call it.
Right.
So I want my client to talk very little, right, when I'm doing mediumship.
Me too.
I'm giving them the information, and as soon as I know that I can give them at least 5 to 8 pieces of evidential information, then we can say, well, this is so-and-so's, this is your mother who passed away by having a heart attack, or she had breast cancer, or, it's very specific information that is evidential so that the person sitting across from you knows exactly who that person is.
Right.
So when you can do that, then as long as they can take all those pieces of evidence without adding a bunch of other little evidence in there that they can't take, right?
Right.
So it has to be continuous, like there may be 1 or 2 pieces they can't take, but you're not giving them 20 pieces of evidence and then they say, oh yeah, well these 8 fit.
Right.
It has to be these 8 fit so that I know that this is the person coming through.
Right.
And then that way it's a healing process for the living, right? Because who's in grief? Not the spirit, not the soul, but the person who has been left behind. So when you're giving them the information, they can understand that their mother is still with them, that they're still around them, that they're not crazy when they hear things or dream about them or see signs or symbols that they're there. Like, I mean, you all see my Facebook posts, I'm sure, of all the feathers I find. Right. And there are certain feathers I find, I know that they're from my dad. There are certain ones that I know are from my mother. There are certain ones that I know are from good friends or other family members. So it's like those things. They're not crazy when they hear their parents talking to them, or they hear something rattling around in the kitchen and they, that's where their mother spent most of their time, or things like that. So, but it is about the evidence of life after death and the healing process for the people who have been left behind.
Is there a God component to the spiritualist church that's behind that philosophy, or a deity message?
They do talk about God a little bit. They do talk about Jesus a little bit, but they're not. It's not focused on that. They do talk about other gods and goddesses as well, but there is a pastor of each spiritualist church. They do a like a whole talk about some type of sometimes it's about a religion. Sometimes it's about life lessons. You know, when they're doing their service. So they ask people from the parish to do the service. So it's not always the pastor who
Right.
does it. So it is, there's a pastor who does a talk, there's a parishioner, for lack of a better term, who does a service, there's a mediumship, there's meditation, there's a healing aspect of it where you can go sit in chairs and get what they call a hands-on healing, and usually they have Reiki practitioners do that because they're educated in Reiki and energy work. So there's a whole, those services, it's a
Right.
long service, but
Right.
there's a lot of it and a lot of components, but it is based on community too.
Right.
You
All
know?
right, guys, we are on time, so I want to plug Angela one last time before we close episode 7. So Angela DiFazio is a witch and Alexandrian priestess who resides in Salem, Massachusetts. She's going to be very busy in the month of October, so if you're going to be in Salem, now is the time to book a reading through Omen in Salem, Massachusetts. If you'd like to see her, when are your seances?
I do a seance Wednesday and Thursday at 7 p.m., Friday and Saturday at 9 p.m.
So if you're going to be in Salem, Massachusetts, the time to book is now because they will all be booked up soon enough. And it becomes hard as a walk-in to get to be with one of our famous psychics like Angela DiFazio. So anyway, Angela, thank you so
famous.
much.
Thank you, Angela.
Thank you so much for coming on to the show. We will see you all next week. Next week is episode 8. And our guest will be Christine Stevens, who was on last season. Don't know what the topic is going to be because it's an ambush interview. And it will be the last episode before we take a break. We will be then resuming in December when Levi gets back from Rome. Yes. Because we're all too busy in October to be able to do the show, unfortunately. So we'll see you all next week for church.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
guys.
Thanks for coming. Thank you.